There are mornings when you wake up and wonder if the person staring back at you in the mirror is someone you even recognize anymore. When did you become so small? When did your voice become so quiet? When did you start believing that everything wrong in your world was somehow your fault? My dear sister, if you've ever felt like you're losing your mind while someone else insists they're saving your soul, this conversation is for you. Because sometimes the person who promises to love you is the very one teaching you to hate yourself. And today, we're going to gently, carefully, lovingly untangle that web. You are not broken. You never were. But someone needed you to believe you were. Let's talk about why. Let's talk about how. And most importantly, let's talk about the way back home to yourself. Take my hand. We're walking this path together. And I promise you, there is a way through. It started so quietly, didn't it? Like a whisper in a room you thought was empty. A small comment about the way you handled something. A gentle correction that didn't feel quite so gentle. A suggestion that maybe, just maybe, you weren't seeing things clearly. At first, you brushed it off. We all have moments of uncertainty, after all. We all second-guess ourselves sometimes. But then it happened again and again, until that tiny seed of doubt they planted began to sprout roots in the garden of your confidence. I remember the first time someone made me question my own perception of reality. I was young, and I thought love meant accepting when someone knew better than I did about my own experiences. I thought humility meant letting someone else define my truth. How wrong I was, how costly that mistake became. You see, my dear, there's a difference between healthy self-reflection and toxic self-doubt. Healthy reflection asks, how can I grow? Toxic doubt whispers, are you sure that really happened? Healthy reflection invites you to expand. Toxic doubt invites you to shrink. The narcissist knows this difference intimately. They understand that a confident woman is impossible to control. But a woman who doubts herself, she becomes clay in their hands. They can mold her, reshape her, convince her that their version of reality is the only one that matters. They don't start with big lies. They start with tiny distortions. I never said that. You're being too sensitive. That's not how it happened. Each phrase designed to make you question not just what you remember, but whether you can trust your own mind at all. And slowly, so slowly you don't even notice, you begin to defer to their version of events. You begin to apologize for feelings you're entitled to have. You begin to believe that your perceptions are flawed, your emotions are excessive, your needs are unreasonable. This is not love, sister. This is not partnership. This is the deliberate dismantling of your inner compass so that you'll need them to navigate your own life. They become both the storm and the lighthouse, the problem and the solution, the poison and the antidote. But here's what I want you to remember. That whisper of doubt you're hearing, it's not your voice. It never was. Your true voice, the one buried beneath all that confusion, she's still there. She's still whole. And she's been waiting for you to remember that she can be trusted. The cruelest part isn't what they do with their own lies, darling. It's what they do with your truths. You opened your heart to them, didn't you? Shared your deepest fears, your childhood wounds, the places where you felt most tender and vulnerable. You thought you were building intimacy. You thought you were creating a safe space where both souls could breathe freely. How beautiful that impulse was, how pure your intention. But they weren't listening to love you. They were listening to learn you. Every vulnerability you shared became a weapon in their arsenal. Every fear you confessed became a button they could push whenever they needed you to fall in line. Remember when you told them about your father's criticism, how it made you feel small and worthless? Now watch how they use that same tone, that same dismissive energy whenever you disagree with them. It's not a coincidence, sweet sister. It's strategy. Remember when you shared your fear of abandonment, how losing people you loved had left you feeling broken. Notice how they threaten to leave, not directly perhaps, but with cold silences and emotional withdrawal. Whenever you assert yourself too strongly, they studied you like a map, learning every road that led to your pain. And then they used those roads to find you whenever you tried to stand in your own power. This is perhaps the deepest betrayal of all. Not that they hurt you, hurt sadly, is part of the human experience, but that they used your own honesty against you, that they turned your courage to be vulnerable into a tool for your own diminishment. I want you to know something. Your willingness to share your truth was not naive. It was not foolish. It was not weak. It was brave and beautiful and exactly what real love deserves. The problem was never your openness. The problem was their inability to honor it. Real love takes your vulnerabilities and builds a fortress around them. It says, "These tender places in you are safe with me." False love takes your vulnerabilities and stores them like ammunition, waiting for the right moment to fire them back at you. You didn't know to protect yourself because you were giving what you hoped to receive. You were loving as you wanted to be loved. This is not a character flaw, my dear. This is evidence of your beautiful heart. But now you know. Now you understand the difference between someone who holds your truth with reverence and someone who holds it with calculation. Now you can recognize the sacred difference between intimacy and interrogation. Your truth is not a weapon. Your truth is a gift, and it belongs only in the hands of those who know how precious it is. They always have a mirror, don't they? And somehow every reflection shows the same thing: your flaws, your failures, your fundamental inadequacy. Stand here, they say, look at yourself. See how broken you are. See how much work you need. See how lucky you are that someone like me is willing to help. But here's what I've learned, my beautiful sister. The mirror they hold is not a mirror at all. It's a funhouse reflection, designed to distort everything you see. It takes your natural human imperfections and magnifies them until they become monstrous. It takes your strengths and makes them invisible. It shows you a version of yourself that exists only in their imagination. You are sensitive, they say, as if feeling deeply were a disease. You are dramatic, they claim, as if having emotions were a performance. You are difficult, they insist, as if having needs were a burden. And slowly, you begin to see yourself through their eyes. You begin to apologize for taking up space, for having opinions, for existing in all your complicated, beautiful humanity. I used to think that criticism from someone who claimed to love me must be coming from a place of care. I thought they could see my blind spots, help me grow, make me better. What I didn't understand was that love doesn't require you to be better. Love sees you exactly as you are and says, this is enough. The mirror they hold reflects their needs, not your reality. They need you to be broken so they can be your savior. They need you to be confused so they can be your clarity. They need you to be insufficient so they can be your completion. But what would you see if you looked in a true mirror? What would you see if you looked through the eyes of someone who loved you without agenda? You would see a woman who has survived things that would have crushed others. You would see someone who loves so fiercely that she's willing to lose herself to keep others whole. You would see resilience disguised as sensitivity, strength disguised as softness, wisdom disguised as uncertainty. You would see someone who doesn't need to be fixed because she was never truly broken. Someone who doesn't need to be saved because she has always been her own salvation. Someone who doesn't need to be completed because she was already whole. The reflection they show you is not you, darling. It's their fear of your power projected onto your image. It's their insecurity masquerading as your insufficiency. It's their emptiness trying to convince you that you're the one who's hollow. Put down their mirror. Step away from their funhouse. Your true reflection has been waiting for you all along, not in their eyes, but in your own heart, where the truth of who you are has been quietly shining all this time. They create chaos and then offer to clean it up. They shatter your peace and then sell you tranquility. They are the arsonist and the firefighter, the earthquake, and the rescue team. And somehow, impossibly, you end up grateful for their help, putting out the fires they set. This is the garden they've planted around you, my dear, a landscape of broken glass disguised as flowers. Every step you take cuts a little deeper. Every path you choose leads back to their door. And they stand there, offering bandages for the wounds they've caused, acting as if they're your salvation instead of your destruction. Do you see how perfectly it works? They create the problem, then position themselves as the solution. They manufacture the crisis, then present themselves as your safe harbor. You become dependent not just on their love, but on their very presence, because they've convinced you that without them, you'd be lost in the chaos they've created. I once knew a woman who told me she couldn't leave because she was too broken to survive on her own. She said this about herself: a woman who had raised 3 children, built a career, maintained friendships, navigated the complex dance of life with grace and intelligence. But she'd been living in that garden of broken glass for so long, she'd forgotten that the cuts weren't caused by her clumsy walking. They were caused by the shards deliberately placed in her path. The narcissist needs you to believe you're fragile so you won't test your own strength. They need you to believe you're incapable so you won't discover your own power. They need you to believe you're broken so you won't realize you're whole. But here's what happens when you step outside that garden. Even for just a moment, you remember how to breathe. You remember what it feels like to walk without pain. You remember that other people don't require you to bleed to prove your love. The drama that follows you everywhere, it's not actually following you, it's being created around you. The constant emergencies that need your attention, they're not random acts of fate, they're manufactured crises designed to keep you focused on survival instead of growth, on reaction instead of reflection. You are not the common denominator in all this chaos, sweet sister. You are the victim of it. The storms that rage around you are not natural weather patterns. They are artificial tempests, summoned whenever you start to find your footing, designed to keep you off balance and reaching for their steadying hand. But what if I told you that outside this garden of broken glass, there's soil that doesn't cut? What if I told you there are places where you can plant your feet without fear, where you can grow without bleeding, where your natural radiance isn't dimmed by constantly tending wounds? That place exists. That garden is real. And you don't need permission to leave the one that's been hurting you. You just need to remember that you have feet, and they know how to carry you home. There's a language they speak that sounds like love but translates to control. You've been learning it without realizing, becoming fluent in a dialect that makes confusion sound like caring, manipulation feel like protection, and isolation seem like intimacy. I'm doing this because I love you. Translation: I'm doing this because it serves me, but your guilt will make you accept it. You're too sensitive. Translation: your feelings are inconvenient to my agenda. No one will love you like I do. Translation: I need you to believe you're unlovable so you won't leave. You're imagining things. Translation: your perception threatens my control, so I need you to doubt it. You've become an interpreter of a language designed to make you lose yourself. Every conversation requires you to translate their words through filters of doubt, guilt, and fear. You've learned to hear criticism as care, demands as devotion, and threats as tenderness. I remember learning this language too, darling. How exhausting it was to constantly decode the true meaning behind loving words. How confusing it became when my heart wanted to believe the surface meaning while my gut knew there was something deeper and darker swimming underneath. They speak in contradictions that keep you spinning. They say they want honesty, then punish you for it. They claim to value your independence, then sabotage every attempt you make at autonomy. They profess to cherish your uniqueness, then systematically try to change everything that makes you who you are. And the most insidious part, they've taught you to speak this language back to them. You've learned to apologize for things that aren't your fault. You've learned to ask permission for things that should be your right. You've learned to minimize your needs and maximize your gratitude for the bare minimum. You find yourself saying things like, "I'm sorry I'm upset," instead of, "I'm upset about what happened." You say, "I don't want to be difficult," instead of, "I deserve to have my needs met." You say, "Maybe I'm overreacting," instead of, "This doesn't feel right." This is not your native tongue, sweet sister. Your natural language is one of clarity, authenticity, and self-respect. It's a language where yes means yes and no means no, where love doesn't require translation because it speaks itself clearly, where you don't need a decoder ring to understand if someone values you. The beautiful truth is that you haven't forgotten your mother tongue. It's still there, waiting underneath all the confusion. Sometimes, in quiet moments, you can hear it whispering the truth your heart has always known. Trust that whisper. It's speaking the language of your soul, and it has never, not once, led you astray. It happens quietly at first, a small crack in the perfect facade they've built, a moment when their mask slips just enough for you to glimpse what's underneath, a pattern you've seen before but never allowed yourself to name. And suddenly, horrifyingly, beautifully, you start to see. Maybe it's the way they treat a waitress who makes a mistake. Maybe it's a story that doesn't add up when you hear it, told a different way. Maybe it's the moment you realize you've been apologizing for their behavior to your friends for months without even noticing. The seeing doesn't come all at once, darling. It comes in waves, in fragments, in moments that make you question everything you thought you knew. And with each revelation comes a peculiar kind of grief, not just for the illusion you're losing, but for the time you spent believing it was real. I want you to know that this moment, this terrible, wonderful moment of awakening, is both an ending and a beginning. It's the death of the story they told you about yourself and the birth of the truth you've always carried. It's painful because clarity often is, but it's also the first breath of freedom you've taken in longer than you can remember. When you start to see, you realize that the crazy-making wasn't accidental. The confusion wasn't coincidental. The constant doubt wasn't evidence of your inadequacy, but proof of their manipulation. You begin to understand that your sanity wasn't slipping, it was being systematically eroded. You start to notice how they change the subject when you bring up something important, how they turn your pain into their victimhood, how they remember every slight against them but forget every hurt they've caused you, how they demand accountability from everyone but themselves. And perhaps most painfully, you begin to see how much of yourself you've given away in trying to make them happy. How many dreams you've deferred, boundaries you've dissolved, parts of your soul you've sacrificed on the altar of their approval. But here's what I want you to remember in this moment of seeing. You are not foolish for having believed. You are not weak for having loved. You are not broken for having tried. You were dealing with someone who was playing by rules you didn't know existed, speaking a language you weren't taught to recognize. The fact that you're seeing now means your inner wisdom was stronger than their manipulation. The fact that you're questioning means your truth was more powerful than their lies. The fact that you're here, reading these words, feeling these recognitions, this is your spirit refusing to be diminished. The seeing is the beginning of your freedom, my beautiful sister. It's the moment you stop being their victim and start becoming your own hero. Trust what you're seeing, trust what you're feeling. Trust that the woman who is finally waking up has been worth waiting for all along. She's been there all along, you know. Your voice, your real voice. The one that speaks your truth without apology, that knows your worth without proof, that can distinguish between love and manipulation without a translator. She's been buried, yes, silenced, certainly, but never destroyed. She's been waiting, with the patience of seasons, for you to remember she exists. Do you remember her? The woman you were before you learned to make yourself smaller? Before you discovered that Having opinions was dangerous and expressing needs was selfish. Before you mastered the art of disappearing while still being present, she used to speak up when something didn't feel right. She used to trust her instincts without a committee of doubts to override them. She used to know that her feelings were valid simply because she felt them, not because someone else agreed they should exist. I know it feels like she's gone. I know there are moments when you reach for her and find only silence, when you try to speak your truth and hear only their words coming from your mouth, when you search for your authentic response and discover you've forgotten what you actually think underneath all the layers of what you're supposed to think. But she's there, darling. She's the voice that makes you feel uncomfortable when they dismiss your feelings. She's the whisper that says this isn't love when they're hurting you in the name of caring. She's the inner knowing that recognizes manipulation, even when your mind can't yet name it. They tried to convince you that your voice was too loud, too soft, too much, too little. They taught you that your perspective was flawed, your intuition was wrong, your truth was unreliable. They needed your voice to disappear because it was the greatest threat to their control. A woman who trusts her own voice cannot be gaslit. A woman who speaks her truth cannot be manipulated into lies. A woman who knows her own worth cannot be convinced she's worthless. Your voice was their enemy because it was your power. But here's what happens when you start to listen for her again. She's been narrating your experience all along. She's been the one feeling sick when they contradict your reality. She's been the one crying when they minimize your pain. She's been the one desperately trying to get your attention, to warn you, to guide you home. Start small, sweet sister. Start with tiny acknowledgments of what you actually feel, think, want. Don't announce it to the world yet. Just whisper it to yourself. I don't like this. This doesn't feel right. I deserve better. This is not my fault. Your voice has been hibernating, not dying. She's been conserving her energy for the moment when you'd be ready to hear her again. And that moment is now. That moment is this conversation. That moment is every time you recognize your own truth in these words. She never left you, darling. She just got very, very quiet. But quiet and gone are not the same thing. And now that you're learning to listen again, you'll be amazed at how much she has to say. When you start to see clearly, their entire kingdom begins to shake. The elaborate castle they built on the foundation of your doubt starts showing cracks. The walls they constructed with your insecurities begin to crumble. And suddenly, desperately, they become the busiest construction workers you've ever seen. This is when they panic, my dear. This is when the mask doesn't just slip, it falls completely off. Because a narcissist can only maintain their power over someone who believes in their superiority. The moment you start questioning their authority over your reality, their entire world is threatened. Watch how quickly they escalate when you start standing in your truth. How suddenly everything becomes a crisis when you stop accepting their version of events. How dramatically they increase the chaos when you begin to find your peace. This isn't coincidence. This is strategy. This is them trying to rebuild their crumbling empire on your confusion. They might love bomb you, showering you with the affection you've been starving for, hoping to remind you of the good times and make you doubt your decision to see clearly. They might become the victim, crying about how you've changed, how you're hurting them by not trusting them the way you used to. Or they might go the other direction entirely, becoming crueler, more cutting, more vicious than ever before. They might pull out every weapon they've collected about your vulnerabilities and use them all at once. They might threaten, manipulate, or punish you for daring to wake up from their spell. This escalation, this desperate thrashing, is actually good news, though it won't feel like it. It's proof that their power over you was never real. It was always dependent on your participation, your belief, your willingness to see yourself through their distorted lens. The very fact that they have to work so hard to maintain control tells you everything you need to know. You were never actually under their control. You were under their influence, yes. You were manipulated, absolutely, but you were never powerless. If you were truly powerless, they wouldn't need to fight so hard to keep you down. Real power doesn't need to defend itself this frantically. Real love doesn't need to resort to manipulation when questioned. Real connection doesn't crumble the moment someone starts thinking for themselves. Their castle is falling because it was always built on sand. Your awakening isn't destroying something real, it's revealing something that was always an illusion. And while watching any structure collapse can be frightening, this particular demolition is setting you free. You are not responsible for maintaining their kingdom, sweet sister. You are not the construction worker tasked with rebuilding their walls. You are the bird who has realized the cage door was never actually locked. And now that you know, you can simply fly away. There's a strange comfort in familiar pain, isn't there? Even when it hurts, even when it diminishes you, even when it keeps you small, it's known, it's predictable. It's the devil you've learned to dance with, and at least you know the steps. Walking away means stepping into the unknown. It means trading the pain you understand for a future you can't yet see. It means choosing the uncertainty of freedom over the certainty of suffering. And that, my beautiful sister, takes a courage most people never have to find. I want you to know that if you're afraid, you're not weak. If you're hesitating, you're not foolish. If part of you wants to go back to what feels familiar, even though it hurts, you're not broken. You're human. And humans are wired to choose known suffering over unknown joy because survival has taught us that familiar is safer, even when familiar is killing us slowly. But here's what I've learned. The fear of leaving is always worse than the reality of being gone. The terror of the unknown is always more intense than the peace of discovery. The anxiety about who you'll be without them is always more paralyzing than the joy of meeting your authentic self. You're not just walking away from them, darling. You're walking away from a version of yourself you never chose to become. You're leaving behind the small, apologetic, constantly worried woman who learned to live on crumbs and call it a feast. You're saying goodbye to the person who believed she needed permission to exist fully in her own life. And yes, it will feel lonely at first. After being enmeshed with someone who demanded access to every corner of your existence, solitude might feel like abandonment. After having someone else make all the decisions, freedom might feel overwhelming. After being told what to think for so long, your own thoughts might feel foreign and untrustworthy. This is normal. This is expected. This is part of the healing process, not evidence that you've made a mistake. You're learning to be your own companion after years of believing you needed someone else to complete you. You're discovering what you actually like, want, and need after years of deferring to someone else's preferences. You're remembering who you are when you're not performing acceptability for someone who was never really accepting you anyway. The path away from familiar pain leads through unfamiliar territory. You'll make mistakes. You'll doubt yourself. There will be days when you wonder if you were too harsh, too hasty, too unforgiving. There will be moments when you miss even the painful connection because it was still connection. But keep walking, sweet sister. Keep putting one foot in front of the other, because every step away from what diminished you is a step toward what will honor you. Every day of uncertainty is better than a lifetime of accepting less than you deserve. You're not running away from love. You're running toward it, toward the love that doesn't require you to be smaller, toward the love that doesn't need to hurt you to hold you, toward the love that has been waiting patiently within you all along. Here you are, my precious sister. Here, at the end of this long and winding road that led you back to yourself. Here, in the quiet space where you can finally hear your own heartbeat without someone else's chaos drowning it out. Here, where you can breathe without permission and exist without apology. This is what coming home feels like. Not to a place, but to yourself. Not to someone else's version of who you should be, but to the woman you've always been underneath all the layers of doubt they wrapped around you. Do you feel it? The stillness, the peace, the beautiful, radical absence of drama? This is what your nervous system has been craving all along. Not excitement, not intensity, not the adrenaline of constant crisis, but this gentle quiet where you can think your own thoughts and trust your own feelings and make your own choices without a committee of fears second-guessing every move. You're different now, and that's exactly as it should be. You're not the woman who walked into their web of confusion, and you're certainly not the diminished version of yourself they tried to create. You're someone new, someone who has traveled through the valley of manipulation and emerged with wisdom, with boundaries, with an unshakable knowing of your own worth. You've learned to distinguish between love and control, between caring and possession, between someone who wants to know you and someone who wants to own you. You've developed an internal compass that points toward respect, kindness, and authenticity. You've remembered that your voice matters, your feelings are valid, and your presence in this world is a gift, not a burden. The woman you are now would never accept what the woman you were endured, not because you were weak then, but because you're stronger now. Not because you were foolish before, but because you're wiser today. You've become your own protector, your own advocate, your own safe harbor in any storm. And yes, there will be days when you miss the intensity of the chaos. When this peaceful life feels too quiet, too simple, too lacking in drama, remember then that peace is not boring, it's healing. Calm is not empty, it's full of possibilities. Stability is not stagnation. It's the foundation from which you can finally build the life you actually want. You are not broken, darling. You never were. You were just convinced by someone who needed you to believe otherwise. You are whole, complete, worthy of love that doesn't hurt, deserving of relationships that honor rather than diminish you. Welcome home, beautiful soul. Welcome home to the woman who was always there, waiting patiently for you to remember her worth. Welcome home to your own heart, where the truth was always safe, where your authentic self was always treasured, where you were always enough. The journey is complete. The healing has begun. And the woman you've become, she was worth every difficult step it took to find her. You made it through, my dear one. You walked through the valley of confusion and emerged in the garden of clarity. You left behind the house of mirrors and found your way to the place where your reflection shows your true face. Remember this moment. Remember this feeling. Remember that you have everything you need within you to recognize love from manipulation, truth from lies, home from prison. You are free. You are whole. You are home.